Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse, and in this recording I'm going to be looking at the astrology of September 2025. So this month, the first half of the month is the busiest, but there is activity across the entire month, but we are sort of very focused on these first 2 weeks of September. And before I say anything else, I want to just flag up that Pluto is now out of bounds. So I'm recording this on the 13th of August, so I'm planning on getting a video up about Pluto out of bounds. If I don't do a video, I will do an article. One way or another, there will be more information about Pluto out of bounds. I will put a link in the box below. But generally speaking, when a planet is out of bounds, it means that its energy can be used in quite wild ways. Stephen Forrest has what I think is the best phrase for this phenomena. And he says that out of bounds planets can be used in criminal or genius ways. So that really gives you an essence of what this kind of energy is about. So there is a sense of extremes, and Pluto itself can also speak of extremes. So there is some very potent energy in play. By the way, Pluto is out of bounds from the 29th of August. I meant to put it in my August video, but Mercury retrograde and all that. So 29th of August 2025, and it leaves out of bounds status. It comes back in bounds on the 22nd of November 2025, but there will be more periods of Pluto out of bounds coming as well. Again, I will cover that in a separate piece. So Pluto is out of bounds. This month, Saturn is returning to Pisces. So that's another massive movement. We've got Uranus stationing. We've got eclipse season. And we have the turn of the wheel of the year as we move into a new season with the equinox. So we begin with the Saturn movement, Saturn going back into Pisces. Saturn is now retrograde, so it moves back into Pisces on the 1st of September, the very beginning of the month. And that means that as soon as Saturn goes into Pisces, it is on that anaretic degree, 29 Pisces. The degree that I talked about in my yearly overview, I talked about how 29 Pisces and 0 Aries are getting all this attention this year. And just to recap, that means we are talking about the end of one great phase and the beginning of a new great phase, because these are the beginning and the end of the entire zodiac. So this is important. And with Saturn weighing down this final degree of Pisces, it's quite an uneasy mix of energies anyway. There is a very strong feeling that we've now got to sum up, we've got to get this done, we've got to finally realize that what is in our imagination comes into reality, positively, negatively, and everything in between. What we imagine comes into reality. And so there's been a prompt for all of us collectively to maybe be more realistic about what we are hoping for. Certainly, I know that it's been quite I would say a bit of a depressing influence in some ways. I love Saturn, but Saturn in Pisces can have that effect because it's limiting. It has a limiting action. So it's trying to kind of keep us being as realistic as possible, because we want to bring our dreams into reality. So Saturn says, hey, I want to make this possible. possible for you. I don't want you hoping and wishing for things that just can't happen, because that is just self-sabotage and you're going to end up feeling constantly disappointed by life. But the effect sometimes of having to sort of rein in our hopes and dreams and wishes can feel a little hard. And also, I think just because there has been a great deal of sorrow, Pisces can in shadow speak of the sorrows of the world, because it's a sign that connects us all. And then Saturn is trying to sort of shut down or limit that sense of connection to everything. Maybe because sometimes we do need to have boundaries, to have better boundaries in place, so that we aren't completely overwhelmed by the suffering of the world. So Saturn in Pisces is a challenging energy. The most positive way that we can use this is to get things together when it comes to our unconscious, to root out those inner demons that are whispering to us in our dreams or in moments when we're not looking. Saturn in Pisces can be the whisper of those voices, that old conditioning that says you're not worthy, you're not worth it, that you're not capable, that you'll never master this, you'll never accomplish anything, you'll never amount to anything. So that this is kind of like the real sticky undertow that Saturn in Pisces is saying, hey, we all need to deal with this stuff, so that we can all collectively have a better vision for our world moving forwards. Generally in the mundane world, Saturn in Pisces can also speak of the trouble with faith and finding meaning in the world, and things seeming like they're very meaningless. Saturn in Pisces can also speak of the trouble with water. So there was a lot of water incidents and sort of troubles with transport in waters. So Saturn in Pisces might be bringing up some of these issues as well. Wherever it's happening in your chart, the most important thing to remember is it's trying to help you to get things together in this part of your chart. Saturn is not there to just annoy you and say you can't have any of this. He's there to help. He's there to help you to gather your vision together, to find that meaning, which then gives you an anchor in the storm, so to speak. If you want to know more about Saturn in Pisces, I have done readings for all the signs in a separate video, in fact, 2 separate videos. So I will link those below if you want to refresh your memory for Saturn in Pisces for your own charts. Then all of those details are there. So Saturn is going to help us to finish this final chapter of Saturn in Pisces. He's going to really help us to get it together, to make that dream concrete, to get those ideas nailed down, to get the books finished, whatever it is, we're going to complete this task that Saturn has set us. It goes back into Pisces 1st of September, hangs around on that acute critical degree until the 14th. There's going to be a lot of focus on this very intense energy. It will station direct on the 28th of November at 25 degrees of Pisces, 9 minutes, and then it will come back into Aries on the 14th of February 2026, Valentine's Day. So yeah, we're going to have a love affair with Saturn in Aries, I hope. I know it's another bit of a challenging one, but anyway, let's try and sort of woo him a little bit around that time. I think that might be helpful. Anyway, so moving on, Mercury enters Virgo on the 2nd of September, a much smaller movement, of course, but it is important because it's been a while, because Mercury was retrograde in Leo, so it's taken an extra long time to come back home. Remember that Mercury is the ruler of Virgo as well as Gemini. So Mercury in Virgo means that communication is more practical, We're thinking in more practical ways. We're thinking about the details, the little things capture our attention. And we're also thinking about Virgo themes. How can I help? How can I improve things for others, for myself? How can I be of service? We're thinking about our work, our daily life, our routines. We're thinking about our health. And again, all the things that we can do, all the little things that we can do to make things better. On the 3rd of September, Jupiter in Cancer will form a trine to the North Node. I just wanted to note this. So it says that any development that's happening, wherever Jupiter is in your personal chart at the moment, wherever it's transiting, it's saying developments here are going to help you to evolve on a spiritual level. It's going to help you to move forward. So be open to opportunities for development in your Jupiter in Cancer house. We have also just got the general idea that having a greater understanding, that's Jupiter, of our feelings, Cancer, a greater sense of belonging and connection to our planet, Mother Earth, home. This is the home for all of us, having a greater connection to our own sense of place and our own sense of belonging. That too can help to open the way to empathy, North Node in Pisces, to connection, to a sense of unity, and even let's hope for peace. The only problem is Mars is going to come in and square Jupiter on the 5th of September. So Jupiter is trying to help us to get this flow of energy towards compassion, peace, all of the best features of Pisces, the qualities of Pisces, that sense of flow, sense of intuition, having faith with Jupiter as well. But Mars comes in with this square to Jupiter. They're both on 18 degrees of their respective signs. Mars is in Libra, so he's in a sign that he is not overly happy and positively. Mars in Libra is motivated to get people on sides, to find the win-win, to ensure that we are working together to make allies. The problem is that Mars isn't happy in Libra and can be a little too forceful. It can try to push the point too much, insist on an agreement or insist on a compromise. And now there's Jupiter involved, which means that we've got some kind of big magnification of this type of energy, which certainly can become quite pushy. It can also mean that there's a sense of righteousness. You should do this. You should compromise because that's what my worldview, that's what my belief tells me, my morality. This is very Jupiter. When Jupiter is in a square, it can be a bit pompous. This is what I believe about you, and I'm not going to change my belief because I'm obviously right. So when we have Mars square Jupiter, we need to be careful because it's very, very easy to overreact, not least because we're also bringing in Chiron to this situation as well, because Jupiter and Chiron are gradually working towards a square with one another that is already active and it's building up. It's going to be perfected in October. We have a T-square then in play with Mars opposite Chiron square to Jupiter, everything pointing to Jupiter. And this T-square will remain in play up until the 22nd of September, which is when Mars goes into Scorpio. Technically, it'll still be kind of there a little bit, but I think it will just generally start to break that pattern down. This is one of the reasons I was saying the first 2 weeks of September are quite critical. Saturn going back into Pisces. Remember, Jupiter is the old ruler of Pisces. So this is all kind of weaving together. And then we have this T-square also in play, particularly heightened during this first week. In the world, out in the mundane world, then yes, we might be seeing situations of aggression where there is an overreach An overreach is certainly one way we could anticipate this aspects pattern, and also it can be painful. Chiron brings in that I'm trying to fix this energy, and that's perhaps why Mars is overreaching, overreacting, because I'm just trying to fix it. I'm just trying to make it better. Again, Mercury and also the Sun, and also, of course, the South Node are there all now in Virgo. So there's a whole lot of righteous anger trying to fix the situation. I see this as broken, but maybe other people see things differently. Maybe other people want a different kind of scenario, and maybe people believe different things. And of course, this T-square is pointing down to Jupiter, which Jupiter is basically trying to stop the conflicts between Mars and Chiron. And Jupiter is saying you need to understand one another. We need to have a greater sense, a bigger sense of kindness and nurturing, which is Cancer. Just having a better understanding of where these feelings come from, and that will help to break up some of this tension. So that's happening on the big world scale, but it's also happening within each of us as well. We might be getting angry and pushy in the house where Mars is moving in our personal charts. We're feeling a bit hurt and like things are broken wherever Chiron is moving in our charts. And then where Jupiter in Cancer is in our chart, that's the place we can go if we get a better understanding of what's happening there. And that's going to help to release some of this tension. So it's a really interesting pattern and quite volatile, just to be aware of that. It is a little bit volatile. We also have, at the same time as this, Uranus stationing retrograde. That's actually on the 6th of September. So by the time Mars and Jupiter start to kick off with one another, Uranus is already stationary, and a stationary planet really does kind of add emphasis and weight to it. It's like everything is slowing down, focus in on Uranus in Gemini. So now we've got shaky communications. We could have breakthroughs, of course. We can have things that are very positive with Uranus in Gemini, as with every other placement. But the fact that it's stationing makes me feel like maybe there is some kind of shocking news, some surprising news, some kind of really kind of strange communications going on. We just need to watch for that as well. Now, the other side of this is generally, of course, Uranus stations retrograde every single year. It's quite normal. We need to have this energy in play, because Uranus speaks to our own inner rebel, or the inner part of us that is very unique, as we all are. And Uranus, more than any of the other planets, wants us to free this part of the self so that we can show who we truly are. The sun is about purpose and identity, but the sun can also be ego. It's like we can think that we are this certain type of person because the ego says that's what I want to be. But Uranus is kind of speaking to the part of you that is truly unique and wants to have a say in what you do in your life. So when Uranus goes retrograde, it's going in to find that piece of you that you have kind of hidden away because you feel like it's too weird, it's too different. I don't want other people to see that part of me because they're just going to think I'm strange. And also it's the part of you that says you are free. You are free to change, because Uranus is kind of saying we need an upgrade here. Wherever Uranus is moving in your chart, you need an upgrade here. You need to be free here, but you need to know that you can. You need to know that you are free to do this. And that's what Uranus retrograde will help us to do. It's going to help us to address where maybe we've been feeling too insecure, because Uranus is going to go back into Taurus. And it's got to also finish up the job. So we're getting a lot of finishing things up. Saturn going back into Pisces to finish that transit. Uranus going back into Taurus to finish that transit. So Uranus starts the retrograde at 1 degree 27 of Gemini on the 6th of September. it will go back into Taurus on the 8th of November. It'll station direct at 27 Taurus on the 4th of February next year, 2026. So between now and February next year, we have an opportunity to revise our thinking and address insecurities so that we are free to express ourselves in a unique way, and that we are free to change our lives, to upgrade our lives where we need to. 7th of September, if that wasn't enough for you, we're now in eclipse season. So we will have a lunar eclipse in Pisces on the 7th of September. This is going to be at 15 degrees and 22 minutes of the sign Pisces. I will be doing an in-depth reading of this chart along with a tarot reading to explore the energies of this chart. We'll be looking at the asteroids that are in play as well. So that will be available for my patrons and Substack members. I'll leave all the links below. But generally speaking, when we have a lunar eclipse, this means it's a big, important full moon. So there is some kind of important culmination, crisis, ending, achievement. It can sort of be the high point of a situation, but it's important because it's an eclipse. And of course, eclipses are connected with the nodes. So this big culmination, crisis, achievement, whatever it is, the end of some kind of cycle, is directly connected with our karmic story as well because of the nodes. And sometimes eclipses can also act like a trigger. So I'm very mindful that even though this eclipse is not conjunct Saturn, I'm just wondering, especially given that it's Pisces, whether it's going to have the effect of dropping a stone into the center of a lake and all of those ripples ripple right out and they gather momentum as they go towards the shore. So yeah, there might be something about Saturn in Pisces being triggered by this eclipse as well. On the 13th of September, I just wanted to flag up that the superior conjunction of Mercury and the Sun will take place very close to the South Node. So it's really going to illuminate this old karma, the ways that we've been thinking, where we've got stuck with our communications. That's something that's going to be highlighted here. And I'm also noting as well that it's happening whilst Saturn is on that final degree of Pisces, and also Vesta is on the final degree of Scorpio as well. So Vesta is trine to Saturn. So that kind of brings in some kind of real intense focus. This is Vesta, intense focus on shared resources. And then Saturn in Pisces is trying to put some kind of limits in place. So there's something kind of happening here that feels like it's happening quickly, and maybe it's trying to get us unstuck. Mercury will then move into Libra, so we get a change in the way that we're thinking and communicating. It might help to soften a little bit of that Mars in Libra. So now we're really trying to communicate with one another. We're also thinking more about other people. So we have more of an awareness of how our actions, Mars, might affect others. Venus then goes into Virgo, where love becomes a verb. So it's what you do that counts when it comes to relationships. And generally speaking, it is the little things that matter. Also, we might find that we want to have sort of greater satisfaction on a day-to-day level with our work. So Venus in Virgo is happy to feel of service. We can find our happiness there. We can find a sense of peace, and we get a pleasure from ordering everything and tidying everything up and cleaning everything up and making it look nice. And there's just this kind of gentle pleasure that comes from Venus in Virgo. We then have the solar eclipse, the second and final eclipse in this eclipse season, on the 21st of September, and it's at the very end of Virgo. 29 degrees and 5 minutes of this sign, which puts it in direct opposition to Saturn, which has only just moved off that 29th degree, but still, this is a really close opposition. So absolutely, this eclipse is going to set some things in motion. Remember, the solar eclipse is a new moon. It's a new beginning that is somehow connected with the past because it's on the south node. I wonder whether sort of on the world stage, whether it's a sense that something unexpected sort of comes back into play, or some kind of scenario where there's almost like a surprise element that we didn't see coming. So I think that's something to sort of watch for. But I also feel as though there is a very strong urge once again to fix things. And this is because it's Virgo. Virgo wants to improve everything. Virgo wants to make things better physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever. It just wants to make things better. And that feels critical. We can see that both these eclipses are very much connected with that Saturn in Pisces energy. So again, I think it's going to be speaking quite loudly to us whilst all this is going on. And then on the 22nd of September, Mars will move into Scorpio. So we now start to see a sort of relinquishing of that overly reactive energy, because Mars was square to Jupiter, just starting to move away from that. And of course, Mars going into Scorpio means that he's now in his home territory. So Mars is the old ruler of Scorpio before we discovered Pluto. So Mars is very, very happy here in his own sign. So he's motivated, because that's what Mars is about. He's motivated. We are motivated to overcome our fears. Scorpio can represent that. It also, because it's a deep water sign, it also just gives us the courage, the bravery we need to go into things, situations, stuff within ourselves that's unknown, that it's kind of unknown territory. It's the dark places, and dark doesn't mean bad. It's just that we don't know it. We haven't visited these places. There's no light here yet. So it's very instinctive. Scorpio has a very kind of instinctive kind of energy. It's a great kind of psychic radar energy, and Mars here is on point. The only thing is that sometimes if we're suspicious, if we don't trust, which is also a concern of Scorpio, if we don't feel people are being transparent with us, then we can overreact, or we can just overreact because we don't trust ourselves. So that is the thing we need to be careful of. But otherwise, this is a really powerful, motivating energy that kind of gets our feelings on side. You know, sometimes when you want to do something, or you know that you should do something, there's a goal that you have and you do want to do it, but your emotions are like, no, let's just sit on the sofa and watch some TV, and or go out and take a walk, or just sit and stare into space, whatever it is. If the feelings are not on board, then it's very hard to get on and do the thing. Whereas Mars in Scorpio, we're being driven by this deep and passionate feeling that we want to change things, that we want to accomplish, that we want to conquer, that we want to compete. Whatever it is, we've got a lot of motivation because it's coming up from this feeling level with Scorpio. We then have the sun going into Libra, so that takes us into Libra season, the time of year when our relationship energy, the idea of relating, the connection that we have to other people, this is being illuminated by the sun in Libra. And also it is the signal that the year has once again turned. This season is turning. This is the autumn equinox in the northern hemisphere. So we have the symbol of the scales for Libra, where we're weighing up how well we've done or not, as far as the harvest of our life is concerned. So autumn equinox in the northern hemisphere, we have the emphasis on looking at where we've come to. It's a really good check-in point. What have you achieved so far this year? And is it a fair exchange of energies? Libra is very concerned with the idea of things balancing in all ways. So that is what we are looking at as the sun goes into Libra. The sun will then also form a trine to Pluto, 24th of September. I'm making a point of noting that because this is also the date that Mars will square Pluto. So now we've got some very forceful energy in play. It's bringing together both the rulers of Scorpio. So there is some kind of potent desire to change things, again, to force people on side, to force people to share. Maybe that's part of the story here. Perhaps out in the world, this could be talking about Ukraine. It could be talking about Gaza. It could be talking about other places as well. But those two places are the ones that are particularly in everybody's kind of consciousness at the moment. They're where the big stories are, that they are being forced to share their land, their wealth, their everything. And so there is conflict because people are fighting back. Mars square to Pluto. So that's something that, again, could be more obvious out there in the world. Mars square to Pluto does sometimes bring up violence and anger, because there is a feeling that we're getting sick to death of the powers that be. So, whether it's the good people who are fighting back against depression or whether it's the bad people who just don't want to follow the rules, whatever is going on here, there is a sense of, that's it, I've had enough, I'm going to take some action and I'm going to fight this, whether or not I can win. The problem with Mars square to Pluto is that we can tend to fight for control where we have no control. And that's the worst way this aspect can come into play, apart from obvious violence and things like that. Internally, we get really angry and then we take action on the things that we can't do anything about, and then we get even angrier because things aren't changing. So we have to be very careful how to use Mars square to Pluto. It's a wonderful, potent, passionate aspect. This kind of energy, we can get incredible things done. We can push ourselves to face our fears and conquer those inner demons once again. We can make the change we were afraid to make. We can initiate an ending wherever we were afraid of doing that, because now it's almost like now or never. Let's just do it. Let's make this happen. So Mars square to Pluto can be very, very good for that, because it is asking us to make some kind of shift, some kind of change. That's what squares do. They put us in compromising situations. They put us in a situation that we don't like, so that we can learn and grow, because we have to take some kind of different action, or we have to, figure our way out of the corner sort of thing. So we have to push ourselves out of our comfort zone to deal with a square. And so that's why it feels uncomfortable, but that's why we can actually get greater satisfaction from square aspects that occur in our charts, whether that's natally or whether that's by transit. We can get a much greater sense of satisfaction than we can with a trine. Like a trine is like, oh, yeah, well, I did that, but it doesn't really matter. It's very kind of nonchalant, a trine. Sextiles are a little bit more active and sort of, we kind of recognize the work that went into whatever we did. But a trine is, like I say, nonchalant. A square is pushy, like a coach who keeps shouting at you to get to the finish line. But if you listen to their guidance, then you are going to achieve something of note. So be aware of that energy around the end of the month, a little bit volatile. The final aspects that I wanted to talk about is Astraea, asteroid Astraea, squaring the nodes. So this is going to be on the 25th of September. And I think this is important because Astraea is associated with higher justice, spiritual balance. She's also in Sagittarius, which is a sign that can be associated with the law courts as well. So we've got almost like a sense of the lower law courts, the higher law courts. It's weird, actually. I've got the chart on a different date, but I'm noticing that as I look at it, it says 1717. Astraea is still at 17 degrees and 17 minutes of the sign Sagittarius. So the date is the 21st of September when it's at those degrees. But it's capturing my attention because as I'm talking about as above, so below, the higher courts, the lower courts, we have these two numbers in play. 17 is associated with the star in the tarot, which also associates with astrology. So there's something really interesting going on here about the courts here on planet Earth and the courts up there in the universe. Obviously, symbolic. I don't think there's an actual court up there in the heavens, but there's something about trying to pull things into line, and that is a missed step. Something hasn't been done that needs to be done. So Astraea comes in and tries to settle this dispute or to settle this situation. So if you just look for 18 degrees and 16 minutes of Sagittarius, if you note where that is on your own personal chart, that's where Astraea is going to be sitting as she squares the nodes. So that part of life is needing some kind of rebalancing. It's important to be honest with ourselves because Astraea is about justice. But she also can sometimes flag up where we've been running away from something. And if you or I, if we have been running away from something in this part of life, wherever Astraea is traveling, she's going to pull us back into line, and she's going to ask us to question, what do you believe here? Why are you running away from this? The belief comes from being in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is to do with our worldview. It's also a sign that it's very adventurous. And it's almost like she's kind of saying, for the adventure to take you to where you want to go, then it's important that you're honest with yourself, and you can't just be taking this trip because you want to run away. It needs to be about the destination, not about where you're coming from. It's not about the running away. It's about what you're going towards. And so that's the story that Astraea might bring to us to help push us past this obstacle so that we can finally put the past in the past and move towards a better, more compassionate, more imaginative, more unified future. This concludes my reading for September 2025. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please do click a like and subscribe. It really does help the algorithm. As I mentioned before, if you enjoyed this and you would like to hear more from me, I do have all of my links below for Substack, Patreon, website, etc. I will see you again soon. And in the meantime, I wish you many blessings on your path.